Pravin, just repeat.
Okay.
Okay, Pravin, why don't you mention the name of the book that you were recommending for everybody so it gets recorded?
Okay, that book is Bhagavad Gita as it is by Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada. It's available on the internet if you just look for it, and it's free. It's a beautiful book, and it's there's translations of the Gita word for word, so it is just absolutely wonderful.
All right. So can you all see my
yeah.
screen now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Shiv, we will say this at the end. There's the other one, Parthaya Prati. That we will start with, I think. That's my opinion.
1 second.
This we'll say at the end when we conclude.
Okay, let me see. The other one is what?
It's a prayer to the Bhagavad Gita. As a mother, we pray to her and then we start discussing.
Okay, start. Just say the first line and I'll try and find it real quick.
Yeah. Om Parthaya Pratibodhita. I sent, I think, both of these in the same mail, or I don't remember.
Let's just do it verbally so we
Okay,
don't.
I'll say it word by word, so I think it'll be easier to follow.
Okay.
Yeah. Om Parthaya
Om Parthaya
Pratibodhita
Pratibodhita
Bhagavata
Bhagavata
Narayanena
Narayana
Swayam
Vayam
Vyasena
Vyatena
Grathita
Grathita
Purana Munina
Purana
Madhye Mahabharatam
Madhye Mahabharatam
Advaitamrita
Advaitamrita
Varshinim
Varshinim
Bhagavatim
Bhagavatim
Ashtadashadhyayinim Ashtadashadhyayinim
Ashtayinim
Ambatvam
Ambatvam
Anusandadhami
Anusandadvami
Bhagavad Gita
Bhagavad Gita
Bhavadveshini
Bhavadveshini
Veshini.
Veshini.
Yeah, basically it's a prayer to Ma Bhagavad Gita. We call her as mother, and I will pray to you and I will contemplate on you again and again. That's what a seeker is saying as a prayer before reading the Bhagavad Gita or talking about the Bhagavad Gita. And it is just said that this Vyasa Maharshi, who has added that in the middle of Mahabharata, who has written it and added it in the middle of the Mahabharata. So that's what it says. And this Gita is told by Lord Narayana himself. So I pray to you as a mother. So it's just a prayer to the Bhagavad Gita.
Thank you so much.
No problem. My pleasure.
Jitain, would you like to tell us how would you start the second chapter, the important points? Just give us one point and then we'll have other people talk about it also.
Okay, so the 20 shloka that we talked about, from 11 to 30, there are three main points there, One which is the most important is Lord Krishna is trying to answer that who am I, so when you kill somebody, what does that mean? So there is a distinction between the soul and the body. And that's what, the Lord talks about. The other 2 points are the non-permanence nature of happiness and distress, so they are like the seasons, summer and winter, and so one should not be bewildered about that. You will get both happiness and distress in your life, so that's the second point. And the third point is, Lord Krishna is saying that even if, Arjun does not understand soul and body distinction, and still, if his soul taking birth again and again, so then he should not be bewildered by that. He should do his duty. He's a Kshatriya, so he should do his duty, and he has to fight. So the first point is the most important, which is basically the who am I, so we are not this body. All religion emphasize that we are not this body, we are basically soul. And nobody can kill soul, soul is permanent, it's everlasting, it's immovable, it's beyond, space, beyond time. It was never born, it's always existed. We were always there and we will always be there, So when we die, and the second question it answers is that what happens after death? So after death, the body goes away, the body dies, but soul stays there. And there are another couple of bodies that Sir Priyananda, if you listen to his lectures, then he emphasizes there are two other bodies as well. One is the subtle body and the other is the causal body. And so they move from one body to the other, just like the soul moves from one body to the other. It's like changing the clothes, basically. So after death, the soul assumes another body, and then it goes on based on your karmas.
Yeah.
So I will stop here, and then we can discuss soul and body differences and what does it mean in life.
Okay.
I can share a little bit from here, from my experience, about a little bit about the difference between the soul and the body, or the soul and the karma, and our experience of the reality, where the distinction to me comes into play is where we are understanding who we are as an eternal spirit, right? And how when we're coming into this body and everything that we're experiencing is an expression of our soul. And so the way that the evolution of this whole world works is, as we bring more of our own essence into this world, we're expressing more of who we are. And this leads to a development of not only our physical body, but the societal structure, and everything that we're building and creating. So I'll leave that off to someone else.
Divya?
Sure. So the question, are we talking about chapter 2 here or chapter 3?
Chapter 2.
Chapter 2. Okay. So we talked a little bit about it last time, but yeah, so I love these points that are coming up about the differences between soul and body, and think it really relates to how chapter 3 and 4 start to develop in the book as well, and how the difference between how our soul will attain moksha eventually, or the different forms that Krishna had taken versus a different form that living beings had taken, is based off of the dharma that we collect within life. And struggles that they're dealing with is, should I take action? Should I take inaction? He's still kind of deciding where he is in this war and what actions he needs to take moving forward. And I think that over the next few chapters, even though it might sound murky to Arjuna at the time as to what Krishna is trying to define to him, because it's all questioning in the second chapter. What do you mean by I need to take action? How can I take action? How do I have knowledge? All I see right now is fighting my family. But it's not until the future chapters that he starts to elucidate what he's trying to get at, and that's what all the chapter titles are about, versus like, karma, yogi karma versus yogi knowledge. This is how action and karma plays into what I'm trying to tell you. It doesn't necessarily mean take action as in fight. It means take action in a way that I'm defining action as karma.
Okay.
Great.
Vikas?
Yeah, I don't know too much on this point, but I think on like the second point, which was like, performing your duty, like they talk a lot about performing duties. I just thought it was interesting because it was like, it's not clear to me at this moment, what is your duty, like how do you determine what's a good, what should you be doing and what is the right path and all that? Like if you, I guess for Arjuna, it was Krishna was right there. Obviously, like it's very clear that whatever Krishna says, you should follow since he's God. But for us, what is our duty? How do we know it's actually the right thing to do, right? If it's coming from ourselves, is that something we should follow? Or are we going actually just misguided and following the wrong path, so that's something I'm sort of like trying to understand and trying to figure out as I'm reading this, the Bhagavad Gita, just, what should we be doing? It seems like a lot of it should be coming from ourselves and we should be knowing what that right path is, but I don't know. It's just something that I'm just trying to deal with.
I know. I think I remember there was one of our friends who was extremely good in Sanskrit and all this Gita and everything. And he was teaching us one day, we were just a few people. He said, oh, you should not be too ambitious. You should not be worrying about making a big house and wearing this, driving Mercedes or whatever. And meanwhile, he himself was doing that. I said, hey, you yourself, you were living in a nice little ranch and now you're moving in a big palace, Then he started laughing. He had no answer to it. So sometimes people just
Right.
talk. But I think
Right.
especially in the Indian community, there's a lot of pressure. I think there's a lot of pressure to live well, so-called well, So
Right.
we talk, but I'm not, it's hard to go through it, Anyway, that's
I think that like in our lives now, the difference between now and like the time of the Gita is that Krishna is inside. So Krishna may not be like an external being, but Krishna, we're connecting to inside of ourselves. And so the purpose of understanding the Gita is so that we can learn how to communicate with Krishna inside of ourselves, even though Krishna is not like maybe not in an external being, or maybe in an external being as well. But first and foremost, we have to learn how to connect with Krishna inside of ourselves. And that's just like a kind of like, I guess, translating that to like normal English would be connecting to our intuition, right?
Right.
So like if we're connecting to our intuition, then we know in the moment, given our karma, given what our experience is, where in the society, where in our life first and foremost, and then where in the society, in our community, is it that our strengths can contribute, right? What has worked for us and how can we share that with other people to maybe, find others that what has worked for us can work for also,
Right.
So this is, I think, like a way of finding the purpose is like when you figure out what works for you, figuring out how to effectively share that with other people is not so easy, but it's like a process of trial and error that's more like a subjective science,
Right.
you know?
Also, I love what you said about like the modern world versus what is Krishna today versus what was Krishna a long time ago. It's really changed because if you look at it, there are so many great people out here, but how many people are actually living their lives as like Henry David Thoreau did over at Walden Pond, where he withdrew anything that was material in this world, and you would freeze. If you lived in Massachusetts, you would freeze, and then you'd be on to your next life already. So that doesn't necessarily mean that you've denied your karma if you happen to have something material that controls the heat or the temperature in your home. So what is material today versus what was material back then has changed its definition.
That's a very good point. Very good point. Surinder, do you want to speak? Surinder, we haven't met you, but are you there?
Well, I'm joining first time,
That's okay.
and I was not really prepared for it.
That's okay.
Unless I have read the chapter and have thought serious about it, then I can share. But my just off the cuff feeling to differentiate between body and soul. It's a very central question, no doubt, Krishna is talking about. But the problem is, or the dilemma is, that body we can see, we can perceive how it is being sensually seeing things around, and then we generate the karma. But the soul, we cannot see. I mean, that is a general question which is arising. And that's why that when we talk about this, it looks very, very good. But in practice, since we cannot experience soul, we are just theoretically thinking that soul exists. And that's why the common person is unable to link with or differentiate between soul and the body. And I think this is the dilemma which we should look into it if we are really talking about the soul. That's my, just off the cuff remark onto this discussion. And maybe like next time when I'm more educated on this and I can give more thoughts into this. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Who's next? Vaishali?
Yeah, actually, I think there are many points being discussed, but yes, the main thing, like Jitendra ji said, is that since soul is eternal and the body is the one which perishes, there is no cause for grief. Because here, I think in the second chapter, mostly Krishna is addressing Arjuna's grief. He is very sorrowful and he is overcome by grief because he has to fight against his own teachers and elders and his own family. And that is how sorrow overcomes him, and he says, I will not fight. So this is where Krishna starts his preaching, and how he tells him that there's no cause of grief because soul is eternal. Even if you kill them, they are not actually will be killed. I mean, either born again or they will be liberated. So that's also there. And he gives many examples, like it's just a change of clothes. And also how Krishna has said in one of the shlokas here is that just like how the body goes through different stages of childhood and youth and old age, same way is the stage where the soul takes up another body. Just think it like that how we change from one stage to another. We go through old age, and that's how this body dies and you take another body. So that's why it's not a cause of grief. And that's what we need to understand. And I think, because, sorry, I have to still get the names, so, and I think somebody said about how do we know what is right and what is wrong while performing a duty. So I think I'm not a very talk a lot on that, but what I have seen is that first of all, we need, like I was saying the last class also, that purification of the mind is important. Only then we can be very clear and we will understand what at this situation is the right thing to do. So for that only we will read, we need to read scriptures and go through what our gurus are saying and all that. So slowly our mind gets purified. So it's just like, Krishna is inside, like Shiv said, Krishna is inside us, but it is just like there's a curtain on it and we are not able to recognize or connect with him. Or so, like how the mirror needs to be cleared, if there is dust, only then the reflection is clear. Like that only we need to clear our self inside so that we see Krishna and connect with him better. And that is why one thing which I also consciously do is that while doing any action, the first thing is to keep our mind at that moment. Any work we are doing, any action we are doing, first of all, our mind needs to be there, so that, and also a thought that I am not the doer. I'm just an instrument. I'm not doing it. So then I think we will not have the pride that I have done something, nor I will have the feeling of a loss that, I couldn't achieve something. It's just that I'm doing I'm putting efforts, but then finally it's the grace of God. I'm not the doer. So that's the big thing. I think we need to see that I'm not the doer. So he is the doer and I'm only an instrument. And yeah, and then I think there are a lot of other things. The chapter is really huge. A lot of things are being said here. So yeah, I need to go through it again and again. Yeah.
To expand on what you're saying right now, I think is beautiful, is sort of getting into what is causing for Arjuna to get caught in this guilt that's holding him back and causing this hesitation for him to actually act on his duty, which is his identification with the body. Yes. So because he believes that he is the body and that all these beings around him are their bodies, this is what is causing for him to feel this shame and this guilt, and that's holding him back from actually being able to see what his duty is. Yeah. And so when we learn to let go of that identification with the body and to identify with the soul, then we can learn how to see clearly what the duty is.
Yes,
Malika?
and Arjuna also thinks that if he doesn't fight at this moment, he will just take up sannyas and go into the forest, and maybe then he will just go to Swarga because he will do good deeds. But Krishna also tells him at that moment that no, if you're running away from this situation, you will not even go to Swarga because you're not performing the duty which you are supposed to perform. So that is what Krishna tells him. 3 things here just before the preaching starts, that you will not achieve Swarga by running away from here. Plus you will bring a bad name because you are a Kshatriya and your duty is to fight right now. So that's what he tells him, Akirti. So bad name, you will not get fame. In fact, you will fall down in fame. So fame you will not get. So
I think this also has to do with like when we run away from our duty and we're acting on, instead of acting from what Krishna is telling us, we're acting on the guilt or the shame. That's what we're empowering. And so this is the bad name. This is the guilt and the shame that we're actually identifying with. And then when we act on that, we empower it and it holds us back.
Malika, can you hear me?
Yeah, so one thing that Vaishali said that I thought was really nice was thinking about the curtain, right? That Krishna is sort of behind the curtain in our minds. That was such a beautiful way to say that. And it's so true that that's the hardest thing to understand, which is, what's sort of the divine purpose to each of our current lives, right? And what are we supposed to do? And there may be more than one thing at a different point in time. And Krishna, as I think Vikas mentioned, it was very convenient for Arjuna to have Krishna there to consult with as the best guru possible. And most of us don't have that. There are gurus out there, self-proclaimed gurus, that may or may not have have the ultimate understanding of what we are supposed to do. They may not have the best interests in mind. They often are corrupt and have other issues. So looking internally is part of it, right? And trying to understand our purpose, which I think is going to be elusive for most of us, even though as hard as we try to do that. And the other way is, I think, you know, the feeling of sort of going with your gut and going with the feeling of what's right. And I do think there is something to that certain things feel right and that certain things feel wrong for whatever reason. And that's maybe the closest that we can get to whatever's sort of behind the curtain. So I think that, you know, all of that's, I think one thing I also want to mention, though, is that what I took from that chapter too is that these are reminders, you know, understanding that we are separate from our body, from the soul and the body are sort of separate in a way, but related in each life. That's sort of a good reminder to just try to keep us a little bit even, so that the highs and the lows coming down from the highs doesn't feel as bad, and the lows also don't feel as bad. We can lift ourselves up from those. So it's a useful kind of coping strategy to think about it that way. And I think, but I think definitely the real challenge is to kind of keep ourselves detached from the rewards of our work. You know, that sounds really good, but it's something that we tend, just as humans, we like to see the results of our work. So I think that one's really challenging.
Great. Praveen, you didn't get a real chance to talk.
Well, yeah. As a result of the reading the Gita, I've been trying to educate myself a lot about Hinduism, and there's so much that I'm learning. It turns out there are 6 different philosophies that are related to the Vedas, and Sankhya is the oldest, and yoga is probably the next. And the modern popular one is Advaita philosophy. In any case, all of these philosophies, they effectively have 2 things which are very interesting. One is, how do you tell what is truth, right? How do you know what is true? What it says is, all the philosophies say, observe and then infer. So that's very important. Observing what's going on around you in the world, in life, and then based on that, making your decision as to what to go on next. That's one thing. The second thing is that there's all the belief in most of the philosophies about karma, right? And karma is something that accumulates on your soul, theoretically anyway, accumulates on your soul based on your actions in this life. And it affects how your next life goes on. So the idea behind that is, with that sort of a belief, then you are going to watch how you behave in this life. So hopefully in the next life, your situation is good, you know. So that's one aspect that hasn't been mentioned so far, is this belief in karma, which is very important, and it pretty much goes through all of the Hindu philosophies. And there's I'll stop there because I think that's good.
Gita?
Yeah,
Gita, show
when I
your
was
face.
reading, right? So it's said that there is God, right? And there is a soul, and there is Maya, right? So Maya is the one that makes us not believe. We cannot see it. It is on us. And that is controlled by God, and that is controlled by us. So we are Jeev, right? Jivatma. And God is the super soul. And Maya comes in between to not let us open the curtain, put it this way. So that is what it is said. So God, Shri Krishna is saying, come to my Sharan, right? You won't you won't sin because you're under me. And since you're under me, you have given up to me, taken Sharan on me, then you will not get sinned, you know. So that's one of the shlok which says that, and I don't know which one it says. So whatever action you take, you will not get sin. So that's what I got into it.
Very good. Shobha is not going to talk today, and so also Jinkle. Jinkle is at work. She won't be able to talk. She's just listening. So that's why I'm not calling on them. Now, there's one very interesting thing to me, birth and rebirth, right? It talks about, I remember when Shiv was little,
But
he
before we get into birth and rebirth, I just want to share a little bit about like my understanding of karma, because I think this is an important concept that we should talk about a little bit. Which I mean, I understand, like, I guess like a basic literal translation of karma would just be experience, like life experience. Like any experience that you have is your karma, right? So the way I understand it is that we can, as we're living our life, you know, as my dad was saying, that this karma, this experience keeps building on top of our soul, as our body, as our belief system, as our thought structure, as our emotional memory, right? And we, in the moment, have choices, right? In terms of how we react to our karma. And so if we're reacting in a way that's in alignment with Krishna, then this is what we call yoga. If we're reacting in a way that is not in alignment with Krishna, this is actually what is building trauma in the body, traumatic memories, where we're not reacting appropriately to the situation. And so this is my understanding of how we can either be reacting to our situation in a way that's creating a yoga, which is like a union with the soul, or we're reacting to our situation in a way that is dividing us further from our soul. And this is just due to our own ignorance, which creates pain, that creates a response, you know, that will hopefully, if we're listening to the pain or the suffering in our situation, will allow for us to learn from that unresolved karma. So if we learn from the pain and suffering that we're creating for ourselves in our own experience, then we can change how we're reacting to the experience, changing how we're reacting to the karma. And this allows for the yoga to happen, which is, again, a change in how we're reacting to what's coming up in our experience. So this is just my understanding of how we, in the moment, are either creating yoga or we're creating unresolved karma. And this is leading us either further towards union with ourself or further to away from ourself. And this is a constant choice that we're making.
Yeah, the third chapter is about that. It's the karma yoga. Third chapter is all about karma yoga. Yeah. So
and like
more will come.
At the 2.27, 2.28, and 2.30 in second chapter, it says death is for all. Everybody dies, right? And rebirth is also inevitable. Now, there was a very interesting question, Pravin. You might remember that question. It was in our house when we were discussing Gita long ago in Boston. There's somebody who asked that what happens if a person commits suicide? Remember? Do you remember that question? Either somebody commits suicide, or if you know, at end of life, somebody has got cancer or very troublesome issues, and they decide, okay, I don't want to live any longer. Please let me die. And they're giving the end of life situation where they can die peacefully. And I know there are quite a few doctors here or in that profession, so you might have to decide that someday for a patient, maybe. But we have done that, end of life and taken permission from the patient, and it's called comfort care. So for the benefit, but what happens to their next life? There is an answer to that by Nityananda, I think, Shiv. Remember? He said that, Pravin, do you remember that?
Yes, yeah.
Can you?
So
can you just say it
Nityananda
properly?
says that suicide is effectively, with the way he said it, it was like something that's very undesirable. Nityananda has a fairly involved model of what happens to you when you pass away, and you come back to another body in a certain amount of time. And if you have lived a good life, I guess you get into another body relatively quickly. But he says that if you committed suicide, you have to wait so many years before you get into another body. And that's
I think it's a pretty heavy topic, but I think it's just what one is doing is really heavily empowering that frequency of avoidance of the situation that's creating the stress in life.
My own feeling is, let's say if you're committing suicide, and in that process, you're not shirking any of your duties, right? Let's say you become an invalid and you effectively become a burden on your own family. Then maybe you want to take what's a hospice or something like that and pass away. You're just having a lot of pain. You're not being of service to anyone, and in fact, being more of a burden to other people. Then maybe you choose that, and maybe that's not so bad, right? On the other hand, if you're committing suicide to escape some obligation, to escape your duty, then that's almost criminal, right? So that's a mistake. Let's put it that way. It's not criminal, but it's a mistake. And maybe then it would show up in your karma, and it would affect your next life if you take it very seriously, if you take this business of being reborn very seriously.
I think the lesson really is that there's no avoiding one's karma. That's the main lesson, is that not that there's any wrong thing with this, wrong decision necessarily, but that there's no avoiding one's karma. So whether you deal with it in this life or the next life, you're going to have to deal with it.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's right. And like Shiv says, it is a very big topic because there's something called as a prarabdha karma, which I have to go through in this life. So I think when I end my life like that, there are a lot of prarabdha karmas which are not getting exhausted. So I have to come back with it anyway, because even if I become invalid or whatever, it's like a part of the prarabdha, which because of some sins I committed in my previous lives, I'm going through this hell right now in this life. But in order to exhaust that, I need to live it. Actually, that's how it is. So I think when one person ends it, it is not considered. I mean, it'll again add up to this thing. So
Malika has to say something.
Let me explain something here,
Please.
About karma, if you're doing any action, that's not karma. Any actions are fine, It's only when you have rag and dvesh associated with that you have a karma. So your liking and disliking imposed on the action is what gives you the karma. And there are ways to take care of these, all of these purifications that Vaishali was talking about. That takes care of a lot of the karmas. The Vipassana meditation also teaches you how to do the meditation. The meditation itself can take care of some of the karmas that you have accumulated. So you have to do a lot of sadhana to purify yourself. The other point somebody asked, Surendra asked, about the soul versus the body. The body is an object, you can see the body, you can feel the body. It's an object, but soul is a subject. Soul is what is seeing the body. So in order for you to see the soul, you have to do the sadhanas and a lot of meditation and all of that to purify your body and, take out, a lot of cleaning of your system you have to do by various means, and then you will be able to realize your soul, or what you call is God, so you go towards God, you realize that that's what is called self-realization, because you have soul and that's the subject, it's not an object, so therefore you cannot view it as an object.
There's one thing that's sort of tangentially related to what Jitain is saying, is that in this Sankhya philosophy, there's every living being has 3 gunas, right? And you've probably all heard of the gunas, and there's probably a greater discussion of this in the subsequent chapters in the Gita. But there's tamasic, which is considered relatively undesirable, but I think of it more of instinctive reactions to things. And then rajasic, which tends to be driven by emotion or ambition, things like that. And then a sattvic, which is considered very good, and that is where you're quote unquote doing good things, I guess, But I think the observation is that in Indian civilization, we've spent too much time, this is what I think Vivekananda interpreted it as, is saying that we spend a little too much effort on trying to be sattvic, and we ignore the rajasic, because it's the rajasic aspect that really deals with life, right? If you're dealing with life, you've got to be ambitious, you've got to have emotion, you've got to have energy and all that. And if you don't have that, you're not going to be much of a factor in real life. So, oh, hi. So that's one thing that I keep thinking about, and I don't know if anybody else has comments about it.
Malika has a point, and then she has to go for the kids swimming. So let her talk first. Let's do that. Mala?
So this is, I guess, maybe this is not related to the comment about the gunas or the other comments, but one point that from the chapter that I thought was that stood out to me was that I think something about, again, that enjoyment of things that are, food or whatever, that's considered to be sinful. And that category of enjoyment of the senses, that's supposed to be on the side of sinfulness and kind of creates bad habits or whatever. And I can see why, I can see the sort of the wisdom behind that. Although, I think I would argue that, if we think about our kids, for example, right, that kind of attachment, there's nothing better than that, in my opinion, it's the best thing. And feeling the senses, feeling the love, feeling those things, seeing your kids enjoy their food, it definitely doesn't feel sinful. So I think there is a balance of not succumbing to the senses, right? Which is, I think, the point of the chapter, is not succumbing to the senses while being able to appreciate them as well. So I think that just the Gita, I think that maybe this does relate in a way to what my dad was saying, that there's a limit to detachment as well, I think. And I think there's healthy amount of attachment and appreciating the physical objects of our lives. So that's I'm gonna have to leave, unfortunately. This is a really interesting discussion, but I will talk to everybody later. Thanks.
Bye,
Bye.
Malin.
I think it's interesting, and it brings up the topic of like motivation, right? Like, why are we doing things if we can't take the results of what we're doing like positively or negatively, right? But I think in this one sense, it makes sense that you know, you're a lot more calm if you're not really, you know, like wishing, oh, if I do this, I hope I like make a lot of money, or I hope I get fame, right? So there's definitely a sense of calm if you're like, okay, no, this is all towards God, so I don't really, it's not going to affect me. But at the same time, it's like, okay, why am I working so hard, or why am I doing this so hard? If at the end of the day it doesn't come to me, you know, it's an interesting balance, I think.
Yeah.
Sort of just expand on sort of what Malika was saying.
There are so many like tangents here I want to go off on. I'd love to have like a one-on-one conversation with every one of you. And I would love to try to connect some of the fantastic points I heard. So Vaishali was talking about the Kshatriyas with Arjun and how it's his duty to perform those. And I think Malika had mentioned how Krishna's behind the curtain there. And I do think it interesting, and I hope I'm not jumping too far ahead into like third and fourth chapters. I think we kind of stumbled into them at some point of the conversation, but Krishna has all these different forms and he remembers his past lives, whereas Arjun is at a point where he only remembers this life. And it was Krishna's value that came up with the Varnas, which are the classes of the Brahmins and the Kshatriyas, and kind of defines where Arjun is at this point in time. So when coming to when this was written back then, when the caste system was very important, perhaps he's trying to say, well, I put you in this caste. I put you here, I made you a warrior, and I know I saw you in your last life, I see you in your next life, and this is what your duty is in the moment. So when I'm telling you to do this, it might not necessarily be what makes sense to you in the moment, but how I balance your actions and inactions will make sense as a whole. So we can all kind of put ourselves in Arjun's shoes, as in he's in kind of maybe like the more of an average class, where he might not have in a past life been, you know, fully on top of everything in his karma list, or you know, he's still trying to pay for things in his own way in his next lives, and so are all of us. And so he sees things from a higher point of view in that sense. And then when we talked about, like, Malika left, but she was talking about the senses and karma and action and inaction. I don't want to get too far ahead, but when we talk about the gunas, yes, there's sattvic, and I usually relate those to foods, but it also relates to actions as well, like how we take our actions. There's karma and there's vaikarma, and there's akarma, where vaikarma is, you know, the negativity of the karma, and akarma is inaction, whereas karma is the action that's being seen in a positive sense. And he really wants Arjun to balance that action with inaction in a way that controls the senses. So control your own senses so that you can balance inaction with action to make the right decisions. And sometimes those decisions might be not to make a decision, or to, you know, if everybody's doing something sinful, like gambling away a warrior, and maybe not to gamble is the right decision there. So I don't know, it was kind of stumbly, but I hope it makes sense on some levels.
Jinkle cannot talk because she's at work, but she has asked a question. Shiv, can you read that question out correctly, please, in the chat?
1 second, I can't see the questions. Hold on.
Oh, I can read if you want.
Can you read it? Yeah.
Yeah. If every morsel/meal is dedicated and offered to God first, and then taking on that food is not negative on your karma, is that true? I don't know that answer. In other words, you offer anything to God. Can you eat that food, and is the food, did you get the question?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Pravin?
Yeah.
Pravin or Jiten, one of you.
Well, I'll let Jiten talk if he prefers.
Well, I think this is the recommended procedure. You offer it to God, and you will offer to God only things that God likes. You would not offer meat, for instance, to God. So you would not do those kind of tasks. So the morsel that you're going to be offering is going to be of a sattvic type, not rajasic or tamasic type. And this is what is recommended, that you offer things to God first, and then his prasad is what you eat, so that all negativity is gone out of that task. Similar way, any task you do, you first, take God's permission in your own heart, and say that this is what you want to do. This will do good to society and to people. So that's why I want to do this task. And then you do the task. So a lot of negativity is gone with that.
What I read
So-
in that Bhagavad Gita as it is also is that whatever you do, if you do it with Krishna in your heart, Krishna is God, I suppose, another word, is you're not really doing it for yourself. You're doing it with Krishna in your mind. Then whatever you do, there can be no sin attached to it. Though I suppose, if you're doing something really bad and you do it with Krishna in your heart, that sounds weird, but you
So
could.
okay, for me, the act of blessing one's food before we eat is a reminder to be in the right attitude.
Yes.
And it's a one of many reminders that we can give ourselves throughout the day. And the purpose of being in the right attitude, the purpose of being in the attitude of being grateful for what you're experiencing, or appreciative or loving towards the experience that you're having right now, is to make sure that you are actually listening to what Krishna is saying. But we can't actually listen to what Krishna is saying if we're feeling angry, or if we're feeling some emotion that's not grateful for what we're experiencing right now. If we're feeling like we're blaming someone else for something and then acting really like on revenge for that person, we're not listening to what Krishna is saying. We're not able to listen to what Krishna is saying, because the attitude that we're coming from is not one of gratitude for what we're experiencing. And so for me, the act of blessing the food is a reminder to say, look, this food, what I'm eating right now is what's best for my body, for what's best for my purpose, for what's best for my dharma right now in this moment. And if we're not doing that, we'll know through our feeling, through our emotion, because we won't be feeling grateful for the food. If we're not able to feel grateful for the food, we know that what we're eating is making us feel guilty. That's Krishna saying, don't eat that.
No, let me make a correction here, Shiv. You are eating that food because it pleases God, not that it pleases you. So anything first, God has to be pleased with that. So that's the attitude you have, not the other way, that it is pleasing to me, so I want to eat this.
Well, what I mean by it's not like pleasing, because you can get pleased by a feeling of revenge, right? You can sort of get a weird feeling of being pleased, right? But that's different from feeling grateful. And what this grateful feeling is just a reminder that you're actually listening to what Krishna is saying. It's not like you're getting a feeling of like some weird negative association with the food. It's basically just a way of maintaining your relationship to Krishna, to make sure that what you're eating is actually what's best for you in the moment. I mean, this is just my experience.
Vaishali?
No, and it's also that, like how Mallika was saying, I don't know if I understood correctly what she was saying, but yeah, like enjoying a morsel or a meal is not actually sinful. It is like how Shiv said, it is attitude. So that feeling of contentment and that should be there, and like gratitude should be there, and no complaining. Like, later on in the second chapter, it's the wise person is described, how he is he has that attitude of equanimity. So he's not complaining, So if we complain that the food is tasteless, or, it's not spicy, and, we keep complaining and consume the food, then yes, it will get attached to us as a karma. Yeah. So, but if we have that contentment, and like how Gita ji said, gratitude also, and it's pleasing to you or whatever, for your work, I need to give some fuel to this body, so I'm consuming this food without any complaints. Like how we also should, it also talks about second chapter about how we should not complain about, the heat and cold and this. So first we should, I think we can try not to complain about things outside, and then we can go inwards, and then, get that attitude also. So yes, the attitude is most important. So the karma doesn't get attached to us if we have the right attitude, like detached from the karma, and I'm not doing it, it's because of a grace it's happening. So then all those things is also important.
Yeah, so the attitude, I believe, when we're feeling grateful and loving and appreciative for everything that we're experiencing right now, that is literally how we find grace, as you said. And what that means that we're just processing all the karma in the moment right now, and we're not accumulating trauma. Right.
The other thing that I picked up from the book that I was reading, the Bhagavad Gita as it is, was that Krishna says that these emotions of pleasure or pain that happen as we go through life for different things, you experience pleasure or pain, you shouldn't put too much, you shouldn't pay too much attention to that. It's just incidental. As long as you are focused on your mission, on your dharma, whatever that is, and you accomplish that, these things on the side, whether they're enjoyable or whether they're painful, don't pay too much attention to them. That's what I got.
Now, if it's a Muslim person, they eat, or they actually put bakra as a offering to God, their God, so-called. All gods are supposedly same, right? So will that make them a bad person if they eat mutton or if they eat beef?
So what I believe about this whole sattvic, rajasic, tamasic, energetic distinction is that what we're trying to do is not even related to these three. It's to actually to maintain that attitude of the connection to Krishna, which means that we're maintaining that love in the heart for what we're experiencing. But what we're doing with these three gunas is trying to create health in the body. This just allows for us to maintain that gratitude more easily. So when we have health in the body, when we have disease in the body, that makes it more difficult, right? But when we have health in the body, that makes it easier. So the purpose of limiting the tamasic and the rajasic foods, for example, and the thoughts would be when one is in that point in their life where they're trying to connect to who they are, right? To understand what it means, to understand what life is about, to understand oneself, to understand what it means to have Krishna in your heart, to understand what these ideas even mean, how to relate to them in your life, right? When we're trying to understand this, it can help to limit the tamasic, as well as even sometimes the rajasic foods, and focus mostly on the sattvic actions and foods in order to be able to calm down the emotion, calm down the extraneous thoughts, slow down the mind to be able to connect to oneself. And then what many mystics have to do, unless they're ready to let go of their body, right, is to actually come back down into the Maya And this is where one would start to, even as an self-realized being, incorporate more rajasic and maybe even tamasic foods into one's diet.
What Lata asked is a very good point, and it keeps coming up in Hinduism as to whether to eat meat or not eat meat, that sort of thing. I would say definitely meat eating is probably more in the Rajasic camp than in the Sattvic. You know, it probably wouldn't be considered Sattvic, and it would be Rajasic. But usually when people eat meat, it's for a very specific reason, right? It's to get greater power in their body, and they have some purpose for that. Maybe they're competing in sports, maybe they are going to be fighting, maybe that's just the only food that's available to them at any particular time. So there can be lots of reasons why someone is doing that, and it's not necessarily, at least in my thinking, I don't think it's particularly sinful, but it's definitely more rajasic. It's definitely more related to ambitions that someone might have. And if you think rajasic is bad, then it's bad. You know, I don't think it's bad.
Jinkle says, firstly, she said, I remember my dadi telling us, but never knew why all this. I am a vegetarian. Thank you for the clarity on this. Very helpful. And then she says, every living plant, animal, people have an Atman. The animals have and feel pain just like humans do, just like us, which is correct, you know.
As it relates to the Bhagavad Gita, I guess we could think about sacrifice as a way of thinking about meat eating. And is it our entitlement to sacrifice someone else's Atman, whether they're a human creature or an animal creature?
As per what we read, we are only sacrificing the body of that animal. The Atma of that animal will, I mean, as far as I understand, will still live, right?
Yes, that's definitely a main point.
So we don't have to think that we killed that person, you know, or the body.
Yeah, their soul will be, you know, innocent, free, and going to the best place it can go.
We go to war. We are in a war. If we go to a war, the humans have to, either you kill them or you get killed yourself, just like it's happening here in the Mahabharata story. Krishna is telling the guy, just kill the other guys before they kill you. And that's reasonable. Of course,
but they are not eating them.
That's what I was just going to say. You're not going to sit and eat those. Yeah. But the point is it really sinful to eat that, you know, eat not human, but meat, you know, animal meat or fish, or, you know, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Somebody's life path is decided, you know, so what you're doing is you're interrupting that life path by killing it and eating it, you know. So therefore that is interfering with nature, nature's purpose, you know, so that normally is not recommended.
So I guess it's the purpose, right? So I guess in this, like, in the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna is saying you can kill other people, the purpose there is because they were doing immoral things, and so it's fine to kill them. But I guess you shouldn't kill someone else for the purpose of eating that person. I guess it's purpose driven rather than. So the sinfulness is not the fact that you killed the person; it's what you're doing with that thing that you killed, I guess.
No, eventually what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, this comes in the 18th chapter at the end, you know, that Krishna was God and he was present there. So whatever God wants is what you are supposed to be doing. So at that time, that was his purpose. That's the way he wanted to do, to teach the humanity a lesson that how should you conduct. The real issue why Mahabharata started is because they didn't treat a woman rightly, you know, so he wanted to set an example that women should not be treated that way. And so all of the guys who kept mum did not interfere at that time. they are all liable for this thing, so eventually that was the purpose.
Surinder, you have any comments? He's not there. Vaishali?
No, that's it.
Any comments?
I think Vaishali is going to have a closing mantra.
Yeah. Is it
Yeah.
time to close now?
Yeah, I think 9:40. Yeah, for me it is 9:45 in the night. So
Oh.
Okay. Let's
Here,
close.
let me share my screen.
no, I mean you can go ahead with if somebody have these closing
No.
points or something. Yeah.
Oh, that's fine.
Okay. Can you all see?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So we conclude. Right? Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah.
Om
Sarve
Sarve
Bhavantu Sukhinah.
Sarve Santu Niramayah.
Sarve
Santu Niramayah.
Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu.
Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu.
Pashyantu.
Ma Kaschid Dukkha
Ma
Kaschid
Kaschid
Dukkha
Bhag Bhavet.
Bhavet.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vaishali.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. It was nice. A lot of discussions, a lot of new things to contemplate on. Yeah, it's very nice. Thank you.
That was great.
Thank you.
And the next session will be again last Sunday of the next month, right? And same time. Okay.
And
Any-
what is the topic for
topic? So Jiten is the most learned in this. Jiten,
No.
which chapter?
After 30, shloka 30 to 72, I think the whole chapter we can finish.
So,
Yeah,
I will
yeah, because
point
I
out
think
that-
fifth.
so we'll do
Yeah,
the
yeah, go
third
ahead.
chapter.
No, I think
Second
Jitanji is talking
chapter.
about second chapter only.
Oh, so we do the second chapter and the third chapter maybe.
No, only second chapter and see what is important there, what he talks about.
Actually, from shloka 54, the whole thing about a wise man, what is wisdom, who's a wise man, how we are supposed to be wise, all that is talked about.
Good.
Okay, so we'll finish the rest of chapter 2 for next time.
Yeah.
Just one point about next time, it is Christmas morning, the next
Oh.
Sunday morning. But I mean, depends on how people's schedules are. We're Hindu.
Should we think about another day?
Yeah.
Right.
Let's
We could do it Saturday. We could do it Saturday. Would that be better? Saturday?
that would be Christmas. Wait.
That'll
Oh,
be
sorry.
Christmas Day.
Hold on.
Eve.
Christmas Eve.
Sunday,
Yeah.
Hold on.
Sunday.
We can
24th
do
is Christmas Eve.
So I don't know what works
the
for you.
next. Let's see.
For us, every day is Sunday because we're retired.
And the week after is the first.
Which is
Yeah, that's a new year.
That's New Year.
We can do it the week before. What do you
Yes.
think?
Sure.
Third
Sure.
Sunday.
18th. How
Okay.
about that?
18th, we
That's
can't
fine.
do 18th.
Why?
No?
I have to go
We
somewhere.
have to go somewhere.
So
How
pehla,
about the week after, the 8th of January?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
then-
8th of January we can do. Yeah.
yeah.
If we
okay.
just like let people have their holidays, and then
Okay.
we'll meet up on the 8th. How about that?
yeah. And then the
Yeah.
next
Yeah, for me,
the
it
next-
works because 18th, yes, I'll be in India and the next day I'm traveling back to Dubai. So 18th would be difficult. 8th is fine. Yeah.
All right, let's do the 8th
Let's
of
do it on
January
8th.
for the next meeting then,
Is that
okay?
okay,
Yeah.
Divya, for you?
yeah, and then the next end of month is on the 29th. So there's 3 weeks in between that too. So it
Yeah.
would just kind of be like we're still keeping the same schedule.
That works.
Great.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks for letting us know.
Thanks, Divya.
Yes, yes. Okay, thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.